thinking about making the move out of Phoenix, Arizona, but you're not sure what city to go to, but you're honing in on North Carolina. Well, here's the scoop. In this video, I'm going to be comparing everything Phoenix, Arizona to Charlotte, North Carolina, so you know exactly what to expect and you can determine if Charlotte is right for you. Now, we're gonna go through literally everything in this video. Cost of living, crime, weather, which is a really big deal, outdoors, jobs, education, the economy, you name it, we are gonna hit on it in this video today. And be sure to stay till the very end, because there's some things outside of these normal parameters that I think you need to be made aware of before making your final decision. So let's learn all there is to know about the comparison between Phoenix and Charlotte. If you're looking for everything Charlotte, North Carolina, and the upstate of South Carolina, you've come to the right channel. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay on top of everything that I put out, even the things you didn't know you needed to know about Charlotte. And be sure to click that notification button and I'll notify you when each of my videos drop. Now, I really do get calls, texts, emails, Zoom invitations every single day from people just like you, and yes, I do have time for you as well, who are looking to move to the Charlotte, North Carolina area. So if that is you, scroll on down to the description below. All of my contact information is there, whether you're moving 9 days or 90 days from now, whether you're moving across the world, across the country, or just across town. I'm here to make your move exactly what you want it to be. So let's dive into it. I've got a ton of content to cover with you today. We are gonna start from the very top, and that's cost of living. That's right, Phoenix and Charlotte have varying costs of living on different aspects, whether it be housing versus groceries, healthcare versus utilities. They vary in different areas. Now, the United States, if we're looking at our baseline, is set at 100. And if we're looking at these two cities, they do both come in above the cost of living for the US average. However, there are glaring differences. Charlotte came in at 102.5, while Phoenix, well, they were in at 113. Now, while Phoenix overall is more expensive to live in, they're higher and lower in different categories. Let me explain. Phoenix, Arizona is higher in almost all categories, including housing, home costs, utilities, and transportation. Now, North Carolina and Charlotte in particular did come in higher in a few different avenues, the biggest ones being grocery and healthcare costs. Now, while groceries were pretty even with Arizona, they just came in a little bit higher, healthcare costs were significantly higher than Arizona. Now, there's a variety of reasons for all of this, and we're not going to dive into this in this video, but it's good to understand, especially if you're planning on making the move. All right, we're gonna rip the band-aid off right in the beginning of this video. Crime. I hate to break it to you, but there's violence and crime in every single city in the United States and around the world. In fact, a video I did last year, which has been getting a lot of traction, has to do with the heaviest crime towns in North Carolina. Some of them only have the teeny little population. So here's what I'm trying to tell you. Don't be scared away because a city has crime, because it depends upon where you are in that city. But let's take a look at the overall for both cities. Now, if 1 is the safest and 100 is the most dangerous, I want to give you a baseline, which is the United States. Now, violent crime in the United States is at 22.7. Charlotte, North Carolina, came in at 34. Meanwhile, Phoenix, Arizona, came in at 37. Now, this is taking into account the population, and it's already doing all the math there, so it's pretty much an apples to apples. In addition, let's talk about property crime. In the United States, this is our baseline, the United States is at 35. Charlotte, North Carolina is at 53.6, followed by Phoenix, Arizona at 52.8. So as you can see, they're pretty even keeled if you were to put it all together, whether you're looking at Phoenix or you're looking at Charlotte. And as I said, in every city, there are pockets. So every neighborhood is not created equal. That also being said, the majority of Charlotte, because I can at least speak to this, is a very safe city. Growing up in New York, I would pick Charlotte every single time over New York. Every single time. So if you're watching this and you're from New York, pick Charlotte. Okay, so let's jump into one of the more obvious things, the weather and the climate. Yes, Arizona, Phoenix is in a desert, and Charlotte, North Carolina is not. In fact, Charlotte sits between the ocean and the Smoky Mountains, which are considered a temperate rainforest. So as you can expect, the weather is going to be a little bit different and the climate is going to be a little different. So let's take a look at Phoenix first. Now, Phoenix, as you would probably assume, has more sunny days and less rain than North Carolina. But having been through multiple weeks of straight sunny days in Charlotte, I can tell you right now, I love it when we get a good rainstorm. Phoenix has 78.7% less rainy days than Charlotte. It also has 37% more sunny days. But here's the interesting thing. With all of that sun, it has a downside, and it comes down to the comfort of the region itself. Phoenix actually scored at 2.7% lower on the comfort index, or worse, than Charlotte, North Carolina, making Charlotte a more comfortable climate to live in. So let's look at some deeper stats. Charlotte, 49 days of rain a year. Phoenix, 9 days of rain. Sunny days, Charlotte, North Carolina, 219. Phoenix, Arizona, 299. That's a lot of sun. Here's where this is really going to stand out. Let's talk about the summer heat. Now, late July, early August is the hottest in any area of our country, the United States. Well, in Charlotte, North Carolina, the average high temps in late July, early August are 90 degrees. Meanwhile, in Phoenix, Arizona, the average high is 105, meaning it gets hotter than that. I'll give you an example. The US average is 85 degrees at that same time of year. So 105 is a little too steamy for me. Well, it would be steamy if you had any humidity in Phoenix, but you don't. That's another huge difference. Charlotte, North Carolina does have humidity. And that's the kicker. Charlotte, North Carolina does have humidity, as does most of the Southeast and even the Northeast. But it's not nearly as bad as some people may make it seem. In fact, I actually prefer the humidity over the dry climate of the deserts for many reasons. One, I love looking outside and seeing green foliage. Number two, I love not having to buy tons of hydration and different kinds of lotions because I'm dried out. It just doesn't happen here. Now, the positive side to having a dry heat in Arizona is if you are in 120 degrees, it'll feel actually like 120 degrees versus like 90 here feels like 98. But either way, you guys make up your own mind. Personally, I'll take lesser temperatures with a little humidity. It just feels better. Now let's chat about winters real quick. Now, while both climates are pretty mild when it comes to winter, we don't get snow in Charlotte, North Carolina, nor does Phoenix, Arizona. The cool thing is, though, if you want to experience some snow, go 2 hours north up into the Smoky Mountains and you can get to it. But we don't have to even own a shovel here in Charlotte because we just don't get it. In fact, the last significant snowfall, over 8 inches, it was 8 inches, that we got was about 10 years ago in 2014. So no, snow is not a thing. But if we're gonna look at the average lows in winter in Charlotte, North Carolina, it's about 30 degrees, and we usually get that overnight, not during the day. In Arizona, Phoenix specifically, the average low is about 43 degrees, again, usually at night. So both pretty mild, neither of them are gonna get snow, and both would be a pretty great place to live in winter. Now, one of the coolest things about North Carolina when it comes to climate, though, is that you don't need to be a snowbird to be here. See, if you are in New York, you know this, or you're up north, you are a snowbird sometimes. You live your summers up north and your winters in Florida, and you keep flip-flopping to get the best of both worlds. Now, that's also true for Arizona, except people don't want to be in Arizona in summer, they want to be there in winter. The nice thing about Charlotte, North Carolina is that we have such median temperatures throughout the year. In fact, you could be outdoors pretty much all year long. So let's talk a little bit about extreme weather. Now on the East Coast, yes, we are known for having hurricanes, but that's on the coast. Charlotte, North Carolina's last significant hurricane was in 1989 with Hurricane Hugo. Now, when I say significant hurricane, I mean something that actually caused damage. Hugo was so many years ago. Now, while we do get some bands of rain that do occur off of a hurricane, we get moderate wind, if any at all. And in fact, the last time we had a hurricane that came through, it was a lesser rainy day than a normal rainy day would be. So that should give you a little bit of security in knowing we really don't get hurricanes, nor do we get snow. As I mentioned earlier, we don't get blizzards. We actually don't really get any extreme weather. The most extreme that we get are some severe thunderstorms in late spring into summertime. And honestly, they're just fun to watch. Sit on the back porch and watch the sky light up. But again, not really significant damage or anything to worry about. Now let's talk about Phoenix, Arizona, because it is a different story. Now it's a different type of extreme weather, but Phoenix, Arizona has monsoon season, which will lead to torrential downpours and flash flooding and things of that nature. There's also dust storms that crop up on top of that. Now, I would tie in there extreme heat. I have been out to Arizona and Phoenix specifically just on a mild summer day of about 110 degrees, and I can tell you it is practically unbearable. So with that, it still does get hotter, and those extreme temperatures do make it a health hazard for many, leading most to live inside. Now, granted, this is coming from many of my clients who have moved to the area and myself who has friends that live in the area. So while it's not my experience because I haven't lived there, I am providing you their information on what it's like to be here versus there. So let's talk a little bit about outdoors. Now in North Carolina, you can pretty much be outdoors all year long. In fact, we pretty much are outdoors all year long. About 3/4 of the year are actually pretty moderate and warm temperatures, which means your outdoor living space will get far more use than you ever anticipated. Add a little gas heater out there and guess what? Now you've got a year-round space to hang out in. With the comparison to Arizona, the biggest thing is the heat. So Arizona does also offer about 3/4 of the year to be outdoors. It's just not in summer. It would be your fall, spring, and winter times of year. Now, where these two outdoor adventures collide is the fact that North Carolina is lush with rainfall, it's lush with trees and greenery and beautiful Smoky Mountains and hiking and things of that nature. And that's within 2 hours of Charlotte. In addition, within 3.5 hours of Charlotte, you also have the North Carolina coast. We are, in fact, from Charlotte, about 3.5 hours from 3 different beaches in 2 different states. Now, of course, there's the entire coast of North Carolina, most popular being Wilmington. Just south of that, you have Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Not my favorite, but it's easy to get to. And then you have Charleston, South Carolina, another absolutely stunning city and beautiful place to be, at least to visit. It's a little expensive to live there, but this is all accessible right from Charlotte, North Carolina. In Charlotte, we have a ton of trees. In fact, when you fly in overhead, especially in summer, you will see just how dense the woods are here, even among the city. Now, where this varies is Arizona is a desert, which means you have a lot of brush. You don't have thick, lush, tall, green trees. It's just different. Now, in addition to that, you're about 5.5 hours in Phoenix from the local coast, which would be San Diego, and you're about 2.5 hours, my apologies, 2.5 hours from one of the closest national forests. Now, here's where national forests in North Carolina and in Arizona differ. We have tall, lush pine trees, oaks, maples, you name it, we've got it. In Arizona, they are shorter, more brush-like woods. Still beautiful, and they have their own allure. Just depends upon what you really love. So let's jump into the job market for a little while. Let's talk about the economy and see what affects you when it comes to moving your life here. First off, let's talk about jobs. Now, overall, Charlotte offers more opportunity, better pay, and a lower unemployment rate than Phoenix, Arizona. Now, this does take into account, of course, population as well, but if you're looking to either expand or launch your career, Charlotte may be the better place to be. Now, the U.S. unemployment rate is at 6%. If we're looking at the Charlotte unemployment rate, it sits at 4.9. Meanwhile, Phoenix is above the U.S. average at 6.6%. One of the interesting things is the future job growth in these two areas, these two cities. The U.S. job growth looks like it's going to be about 33%. Now, this is where Phoenix and Charlotte differ. Charlotte actually, projecting ahead, looks like it's going to have a slightly slower expansion of the job market than Phoenix, Arizona. Now, of course, this is all projections, and we'll see how it actually comes out, but Charlotte's projections are 45 versus Phoenix, Arizona at 48. And as a reminder, the U.S. is at 33. So we're going to see where these actually shake out. Now, over the last 10 years, there's been job growth in both, of course, Phoenix as well as Charlotte, North Carolina. Over the last 10 years, the U.S. has grown by 6.3%. Charlotte grew by 26%. Meanwhile, Phoenix, Arizona grew by 23%. So technically, Charlotte over the last 10 years has outpaced Phoenix, Arizona, and both have outpaced the rest of the U.S. average. So let's jump into education. Now, I'm going to talk to you about not only what it looks like and the educated population in each city, but I also want to share a little bit about the colleges. So let's jump into high school education. Now, every city and state spends different amounts on the students in their high schools. In comparison the US average versus Pheonix versus Charlotte, it's actually very interesting to see what the numbers look like. In the US average, they spend about $15,000 per student. In Charlotte, North Carolina, they spend about $12,600, and in Pheonix, they spend about $10,500 per student. Now, I'm not saying that this makes either student smarter or not, but it does tend to go down that the more that is spent into a school system, and per student, usually the better outcome you see in the education. Now, there's a few different things to look at, which we're not going to dive into in this video, but looking at the student to teacher ratio, how much is actually going to academics, as well as the overall growth of the school, can truly give you the final look at whether or not a particular school system is operating to the advantage of the student. Now, from a high school education standpoint, looking at going through the entirety of high school and high school graduation, the average in the United States is 89%. It's an 89% graduation rate. Charlotte, North Carolina is 90%. Meanwhile, Pheonix, Arizona is at 84%. Now, both are very good percentages across the board, as there are some cities and states that definitely come in lower. But let's take a look as well at the 4-year degrees, the population with 4-year degrees in Pheonix versus Charlotte. Now, in the United States, 37% of the population has a 4-year degree. If you know anything about me, I don't put a whole lot of weight in a 4-year degree because I know plenty of people who have changed the world and changed their lives without one. But if you are curious as to what this looks like, let's dive into Charlotte versus Pheonix. 46% of the population in Charlotte, North Carolina have a 4-year degree, meanwhile 37% in Pheonix have a 4-year degree. Now, this is very interesting as we start to look into how many colleges there truly are in each of the states. When I was looking at the stats for this, I was actually quite shocked to find out what I'm about to tell you. In North Carolina and in Arizona, while there's dozens of different schools you can go to for higher education, such as private schools, public schools, trade schools, community colleges, you name it, if we're looking just at public universities, these stats were glaring. In North Carolina, there are over 16 public universities spread all the way from Cherokee, which is in the upper western Carolina mountains, all the way to Wilmington on the coast. In Arizona, there are just 3. Now, this may lead to the reason why there are less college-educated or 4-year degrees in Pheonix, Arizona, or it might just be that everybody likes to go out of state. Either way, you have an opportunity if you're living here in North Carolina, especially if you're bringing your children here, for them to have a ton of options when it comes to universities here in North Carolina. In fact, the cost of education for a 4-year degree here in North Carolina is actually pretty nominal compared to some other states. In fact, there are some students that come from out of state to North Carolina, and it's still less expensive to pay out-of-state tuition than being in their home state. So when it comes to college, if you're looking for some great opportunity, Charlotte, North Carolina, and North Carolina in general are definitely where you need to be. So let's talk about something that's definitely going to affect you, whether you're coming here on your own or with your family, or even to retire. And it's the economy of Charlotte, North Carolina versus Pheonix. Now, sales tax is always a big thing that people talk about, and I'm going to tell you, when we start talking about taxes, they are going to get you somehow, whether it's with retirement, whether it's with income tax, sales tax, property tax. The taxes are going to happen. It just depends upon which way you're going to cut it. So first, let's talk about sales tax. The US average for sales tax is 6.2%. Charlotte, North Carolina is at 7.3%, while Pheonix, Arizona is at 8.6%. Now, while sales tax is a little bit higher in Arizona, your actual income tax is a little bit lower. The US average for income tax is at 4.6%. Charlotte, North Carolina, on the other hand, is at 4.5%, and in Pheonix, Arizona is at 3.4%. So you're definitely going to win when it comes to income taxes in Pheonix, Arizona. Another huge difference has to do with the property taxes. Now, property taxes are significantly lower in Pheonix, Arizona than they are here in Charlotte, North Carolina. That being said, however, we don't assess our properties but every 5 to 7 years, meaning your tax value is not based upon what you last purchased your house from. What that means is your tax value, which is what you're taxed on, is not based upon the last sales price. In fact, because it's not reassessed but once every 5 to 7 years, you could be paying taxes on the value of a house from 7 years prior. Now that was working out really, really well when we were paying our taxes in 2022 based upon pre-2020 prices. But of course we did have a reassessment which did catch up, but for the majority of the Charlotte area, it's still listed at lower than what the actual market value would be. And because it's going to be set in stone for the next 7 years, well, guess what? You're going to be in a good spot, especially over the next few years. Now, one of the reasons why Phoenix, Arizona's taxes are lower is because they base their tax rate on paying on 40% of the tax value, which is different because Charlotte will charge it on 100% of the tax value. So keep that in mind when you're looking at taxes, but it might be worth the quality of life to be in Charlotte to pay a little extra. Now, in addition to that, I do want to touch on the median family income. The US average median family income is $85,000. Now, surprisingly enough, Charlotte is right there at a median of $85,000. Now, Phoenix, Arizona is a little bit different. Median family income is at $75,000. Now, if you pull in the median cost of living from the earlier conversation, if Phoenix, Arizona's cost of living is at $113, but their median family income is $10,000 less than Charlotte's, but Charlotte's cost of living is far lower at $102.5 and has $10,000 more than Phoenix, Arizona. And it looks like your dollar is going to go much farther and you'll probably earn more here in Charlotte. Now, the moment you've been waiting for, let's talk about houses. The house age in Charlotte versus Phoenix is actually very different. And I know I rarely talk about house age, but I think I need to bring this up. And I'm going to tell you why the age is different in here in just a second. The median age of a home here in Charlotte is 35% younger than that of a home in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, what this means is we have a lot of housing that's being built. That's right, Charlotte is growing rapidly. And with that growth, well, we need more housing. So with that, we build and build and build and build. In fact, we're outpacing the rest of the US. The median home age in the United States is 42 years old. Phoenix, Arizona is at 38, but Charlotte is 29. That's right, the median age of a home here in Charlotte is 29 years old. Again, a lot of this has to do with the boom not only in the 90s, but again into the 2020s. Because we had so many people moving here during the pandemic, and before then, honestly, but we had a huge boom during the pandemic, and that's continued, especially as people aren't as tied to their physical locations for work. With that being said, combined with the cost of living and the temperate climate, it is the perfect place to call home. And so, land has been selling like wildfire out here. And by the way, we don't get wildfires like Arizona does, just pointing that out. Anywho, so in Charlotte, it's more likely for you to be able to find a new construction home for a decent price. Now, of course, the farther away you go from Charlotte, the easier and less expensive it's going to be to find that property, but there are so many options in so many price points. Now, the median home cost in the United States is $331,000. Charlotte, North Carolina comes in at $381,000. Meanwhile, Phoenix is at $413,000. Making Phoenix, Arizona actually more expensive to find a home. Now, Phoenix, Arizona is growing rapidly as well. And part of that rapid growth has been rapid ascent when it comes to the home values in Phoenix. The challenge, based upon the median home age, they're not keeping up quite as well when it comes to new construction. The appreciation over the last 5 years in the United States of homes has been 57%. Charlotte, North Carolina has had an 81% increase. Meanwhile, Phoenix, Arizona has increased by 94%. Both of those numbers are staggering, and both of them have to do with the growth of those cities. Now, you stuck around to the very end. That's right, we're here, and I have to tell you about the bit of information you need to know before moving here. Now, this might shock you, especially if you're moving from Phoenix, but there are places where there are very few venomous creatures. Let me explain. Phoenix, Arizona, as I'm sure you know, has a plethora of venomous creatures. Well, let me name just a few, and I'm going to give you what you need to look out for here in Charlotte, North Carolina. You guys have rattlesnakes, Mojave greens, diamondbacks, coral snakes, giant desert centipedes. Guys, horrifying, okay? Gila monsters, tarantulas, sidewinders, scorpions, Sonoran desert toads, and about 5 other venomous snakes and about 5 other venomous spiders. Guys, I don't know how you survive out there. Like, I really don't. I would panic if I see a scorpion. Here's what you gotta worry about in North Carolina though, specifically in Charlotte. Yes, there are timber rattlers here in North Carolina, but we don't have them really in Charlotte at all. Instead, they're actually further out into the Pines areas, which is east of us. We do have cottonmouths and copperheads as well as water moccasins, but the only one that you're really gonna find in Charlotte is a copperhead. And in fact, in 20 years, I have seen 2. One of them while up in the mountains and one of them out in my backyard. Now, that being said, in 20 years, that's pretty good odds because I spend a lot of time outside. Now, we do also have wolf spires and black widows, just like you guys do out in Pheonix, but that's pretty much it. Nothing else that's gonna go bump in the night, except for 2 other creatures that I have to make you aware of. Now, don't panic. It's something called a palmetto bug. Now, for anybody who understands what that really means, it's basically a cockroach. They're about this big and they fly. Don't worry, they're not gonna hurt you, but if you ask my husband, you'd think it would murder me in the middle of the night the way I scream when I see them. Now, that being said, they're completely normal. They live in the woods and occasionally they make their way inside. And the last one that I hate with every bit of my existence are mosquitoes. Yes, we have mosquitoes, but as bad as it sounds, they're actually not nearly as bad as some other states like Louisiana, Alabama, and Florida. It's not the state bird, I'll put it that way. Are they a nuisance? Yes, but there's plenty of ways to keep them off of you, plenty of natural remedies to keep them out of your yard. So it's not as bad as it seems, but we do get actual bugs here. They're just around, but they're not gonna bother you. So I will take my little bugs over plenty of venomous creatures like tarantulas and scorpions any day. So I hope you got value from this video, whether you're planning on moving to Charlotte, North Carolina, or maybe you're considering Pheonix. Hopefully this shed some light on what you need to know and what you need to consider before making the move. And I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Drop them in the comments below. And if you want to know more about Charlotte and stay up to date on North and South Carolina, go ahead and like and subscribe. I would love to have you as a subscriber, and I hope you continue to glean information about Charlotte, North Carolina, and the upstate of South Carolina. And as always, I really do get calls, texts, emails, Zoom invites from people just like you every single day. Really, every day. I got a text while I was filming this today. Now, if you're thinking of making the move, drop down to the description below. All my contact information is there. Whether you're moving 9 days or 90 days from now, whether you're moving across the world, across the country, or just across town, we're here to make your move exactly what you want it to be. So until next time, I look forward to showing you around town. So you're making the move. There's a lot of videos that you can be watching, like this one right here, or maybe even this one. Really either one of these, but honestly, watch both of them because they're gonna help you make the move. Go ahead, pick one. They're both really good.